Looks good. We are going to get started. Hi everyone. Thanks so much for being here. We're very excited today to talk about something that we know is top of mind for a lot of you, how to actually deploy AI in banking and, more importantly, see results. I'm Katie Quilligan, a principal investor at BankTech Ventures. We're a strategic investment fund and market intelligence firm backed by over 100 community banks. We discover, evaluate, de-risk, and fund the best emerging companies reshaping banking. We have a great lineup for you today. The Chief Innovation Officer at Colony Bank, who successfully deployed AI and transformed manual processes that took hours into ones that took minutes, along with a team from DeepSee, who's working with banks across the country. And just a quick context on DeepSee, they bring AI-powered automation and orchestration to banks to reduce costs, manage risk, and drive operational outcomes. What makes them different, though, is that they use intelligent AI agents that adapt to different systems and understand context, not rigid rule-based scripts like traditional automation tools. It's designed for business users and subject matter experts, not just your technical teams, and it's built with compliance in mind, with the necessary controls and certifications. I have the pleasure of hosting today because we're an investor in DeepSea, and Colony Bank is one of the banks that invested in our fund. I like to think I played matchmaker here, and today we're going to get to see how it's working out. But before we dive in, let me have our panels introduce themselves. Christian, do you want to start?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Christian Ruppe. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Colony Bank. We are a $3.8 billion bank in South Georgia, all across Georgia. However, I don't want the size of the bank to make you think this is just for larger banks. If anything, I think it's harder at a larger bank to move it. So no matter what the size of your institution is, I promise you'll be able to find value in some kind of AI agentic capability. Um, Colony, we have about 40 branches. We actually, on Monday, will be converting over a bank that we bought. So maybe be getting lots of emails during this. We'll see. But yeah, we've been working with DeepSea. We've been doing some other AI projects as well for a little over a year now, I would say. And not all of the things that we have done have been home runs, but almost all of them have been usable and a lot of them have made a huge difference. So excited to talk today about practically how to get started and start building the muscle of using tools like this to build operational efficiency in your FIs.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian. And Steve?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Steve Shillingford, founder, CEO of DeepSea. We've been at this since 2019. We are a group of ex-operators in financial services and lots of nerds who worked with AI, machine learning, and agentic solutions in the past. And so we're uniquely focused on the segment and on delivering, as Katie mentioned, that orchestration and automation powered by agentic technologies for business users to drive and manage and gain efficiency from.
Awesome. And Colleen?
Thank you. I'm Colleen Leonard. I'm the head of field operations at DeepSea. I'm one of the non-nerds. Don't correct me, Steve. I and my team manage all of the proofs of value and implementations that we do within DeepSea, whether it's a new use case or one that we're used to employing or deploying. Sorry, I'm on a different time zone. It's a little later here. My background is in banking operations, both at JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, and prior to that in the military. So I feel like me and my team are really uniquely focused and positioned to relate to the people who are deploying this kind of AI because we are used to the pains of some of those manual tasks within banking operations that your teams may be experiencing today.
Great. So here's a little bit about how today's going to work. We're going to have a conversation about Christian's journey deploying AI at Colony Bank, from identifying the right use cases to building the business cases to getting his team on board and then actually seeing those real results. And then Steve and Colleen will share what they're seeing across multiple bank deployments. Please feel free to drop questions into the chat. We'll try to address them as we go. If we don't get to them, we promise we will get you those answers. So with that, we're going to get started really talking about the approach. So Christian, I want to start the very beginning, a lot of banks are being told that they need to do AI, push it in, but you took a different approach. Can you talk about how you thought about this and what really was your starting point?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been tracking and hearing about AI just like everybody else. So there was the underlying fear of, oh no, we're going to get left behind. What do we need to do? Should we spin up an AI committee? How should we handle this? And ultimately, we made the decision that we always do, which is let's not chase solutions to problems that we don't know exist. Let's instead go back to our strategic plan. What do we want to be? What do we want to get done? What are the fires that we're going to commit to put out in the next year, 2 years, whatever? Um, and with AI in mind, as we started going into our strategic plan and looking for things that we wanted to solve, it started becoming clear, hey, some of these things I believe we could probably solve with AI. And so rather than saying, hey, let's just go find an AI partner and sign up with them, we instead say, let's keep doing it the way we always do it. Let's look for the problem, find the best way to solve the problem. And because of how powerful AI is, a lot of times AI is the solution to that problem. So I don't know if you want me to go into the exact example and kind of how we came to the decision. Okay.
Yeah, you
So
beat me to the question.
good. So basically we have hiring that's going to be coming up like every bank. We know things are scaling well, things that are getting more complicated, whatever it is. One of those for us is our indirect lending business. We do indirect loans for RV and marine. The business is doing well, especially during spring and summer times. And so we always get this big influx of applications. And so that team is relatively small. It's efficient, but we had one person who was manually going through every single loan that came in. It was like a checklist of, Colleen knows better than I do at this point, but 83 checklist items or something like
I
that.
think we're over 120 now. So
Yeah. So they're checking so many things of just, does the name on this document match the name on this document, match the name on this? Um, do 120 things like that. It takes a long time to get a loan done. Um, and so they basically came to the leadership and said, we need to hire a new person. We're already having to have a half employee over the summer. We need to have a second full-time person. And so at that point, our natural inclination is just, okay, let's do the ROI. Do we need to hire a person? Do we want to scale this? Whatever it is. And that's when we said, well, could we automate or dramatically improve the efficiency of this process to where we don't need to hire that person? And so fortunately, that team was excited about that idea. They could keep it cheaper, they could continue to grow. Theoretically, they could grow triple, quadruple the size and still not need to hire additional people. And so that was really our first use case. So we went to DeepSee, we said, here's our struggle. Um, can we make this ROI work? And then also, hey, now we've got a partner with DeepSee that we can go and do the second, the third, the fourth implementation in a much cheaper way. We're not having to go and look at a bunch of tools. And so ultimately, that became our first use case, was just, we are going to have to hire a person if we don't solve this. Theoretically, instead, we could build something to help automate this process for the same price or cheaper, and then it scales and we can get a lot more efficiencies down the line. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, we're still, the fun thing about it is that there's always ways you can expand on it and increase it and improve it. And so we're still in that phase, but we've added multiple use cases across the bank. And the story I always like to tell is just that the first person that came to me once we signed this deal was our compliance officer. And I'm thinking I'm going to get in trouble. And instead it's, hey, we better be the next use case because I've got some things I need you to do. And so as soon as the compliance officer is pushing for an agentic AI tool, that's when I know, okay, maybe we're doing all right here.
That's great. And I think obviously skip the AI committee, go to real problems, talk to your teams and do that. Steve, can you give us a little bit more from your perspective working with multiple banks? What else do you see as the difference between banks that really succeed with AI deployments versus those that continue to struggle?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Christian hit the nail on the head. I think, there's just a couple like high level maybe guideposts I might lay out. I think one is we're all experimenting with AI, right? We can't avoid the Copilot UI because it's everywhere in Microsoft products. And we obviously follow all the hype with other tools out there. I think in the context of financial services, the thing that I believe all firms are considering is, okay, how do I leverage that really powerful capability, but do it with guardrails? And we live in a highly regulated industry. We have lots of internal and external compliance mandates that we really have to be attenuated to, and just really, make sure we don't get off the rails, so to speak. And so when we talk to firms about, and I hate to talk about AI because AI is just such a hyper buzzword right now. We really try to talk about outcomes that they're shooting for. And I thought Christian really undersold this. Like, the best in class firms that we work with start with the problem and then sort of backport into, okay, how can something with AI in it actually get us processing more loans faster, or getting more efficiencies, or zeroing out some of the risk embedded in some of those manual and mundane processes. I think that's really the way to do it. It's too easy. And we all succumb to this, like the bright and shiny object. Everybody's got, they're slapping AI on golf clubs now. Like, it's just everywhere. And you have to sort of take a step back and go back to first principles and say, okay, where are we inefficient? And where are we scaling with inefficient resources? And then look for the applicability of these solutions. And then, even after you identify an application or a use case, you really have to think it all the way through, because we talk about the orchestration of a given process. It's not enough that your model extracted all the content, and it might even, reconcile properly, but is it doing it with no bias? Is it doing it in a way that you can see it from a transparency and auditability perspective? Those are really important, I think, sort of check boxes that you want to make before you actually adopt this kind of technology. And the only other thing I would say is, I think the other problem that we see with folks who struggle with adoption is you sort of committee decisions. I mean, I think it's very important to involve the entire business, across a bank, but you really do want to have one sort of person with that innovation mindset, understands the business, sort of willing to kind of rewire new neurons to think about it differently, and really give them the charter to go sort of look for those opportunities to really wring out more efficiency and more opportunity.
Awesome. So, what I really heard from both of you is that business problem first, then evaluate if AI is the right solution or it should be there. So, from that, Christian, once you've identified the problem, how do you even go about finding the right solution? There are so many vendors out there and they continue to email you more and more, I'm sure. How do you cut through that noise?
So, I mean, you know me well, Katie. I like to talk to a lot of companies, and I think a lot of fintechs are having the same issue that the bank is having, which is just, we're an AI company. We can build AI, we can do this. And it almost comes back to the same thing of, I don't need an AI company. I need a solution to this problem. And so many of the companies that I talk to are just, we are agentic AI for banks. We do this. Okay, well, what do you do? What do you solve? Like, are you a dev shop then? And is that what I'm hiring? If so, then okay, let's talk about that. But I think that what I've found is the best companies, the ones who are succeeding and getting real traction, are the ones that are saying, we are a solution to this problem. We can help you solve it. Yes, we use AI to do that a lot of the times. We also use these tools, whatever. Um, so I think that's the first thing, is just look for the solution to your problem. And when you're having that conversation, keep your strategic plan in mind, because if there's one solution that just solves this one thing and that's it, and this is the cost, if that's the right decision, then make it. But if your goal is, hey, look, I know what our strategic plan is, and I can see all these different things along the way that we think we can solve with this kind of tool. Well, if there's a second company that solves this problem, but also enables you to solve future problems for the same price, or, and a price that makes sense, that's typically the one that we like to go for. One, it's just easier to not have to go and get 10 companies approved. But if you can find kind of a partner that puts out the fire that you're trying to put out, but also opens you up to keeping future fires from starting, then awesome, go for it. In general, though, our strategy is really just, hey, let's talk to all these groups. I'm going to call Carrie at BankTech Ventures. I'm going to call whoever it is that I'm connected to and say, we're trying to solve this problem. Can you give me some ideas of who to talk to? And, a plug for BankTech, that is one of the big benefits is just, we really need help with this. You guys talk to 1,000 companies a year, probably, who are the ones that are solving this. And then that gives you your initial list to go in and just have those demos, tell them your problem, and then try and get it solved.
Thank you, Christian. Promise we didn't ask you to say that. So from that, it sounds like what I heard, some pieces of you are looking for a vendor that can answer your problems, get you ROI now, but also potentially for future. So can you tell us a little bit about how you build this business case when you're doing the evaluation? What are the metrics that you're really focusing on?
Yeah, I think that's the fun thing of my position and a lot of people's position is just it is an art. It's not a science. It really comes down to just what are you trying to solve? What means success? Is it just a straight up efficiency play? If so, where are the costs that you currently have? Where are the bottlenecks that are keeping you from scaling? Figure out what those numbers are. And then, compare that to the price of the solution. So for us, it was pretty easy for this use case, which was what is it going to cost us to add a body here over the next year, 10 years, whatever? And then what would it cost us instead to test this out and make it work? And so the best thing is that I can do that internally for my team to understand it, but I can also do that for DeepSee. So I didn't just look at their pricing and say, okay, cool, we'll do it. It was, hey, Steve, here's what I have. Here's what I need to try and figure out. I need a solution for this. Here's how I'm going to pitch it to the bank. Can you help me in a way that makes this ROI story make a lot of sense? And that's a conversation for here, but for really just that's a tip for any kind of fintech or solution going down the line is just, work with the fintech to get creative with it.
Yeah, helpful. And I think to that end, Colleen, from your side, when you are working with the banks on scoping these projects, what are the most important things you're looking at to help them build those business cases? How can you help support them?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things that maybe we haven't covered yet. I think it's just important to make sure that we're helping pull out that true problem statement. So instead of, like we've said, having someone come to us and say, we want to use AI, um, spending the time with those clients to dig into what are you actually having a problem with. And I think what Steve and I can help do is add to some of that problem statement that maybe has already been addressed. And things that come up are, to Christian's point, maybe you don't want to hire that extra person, or maybe you want to get away from hiring a temp. But also, maybe the knock-on effect of this is going to be that you're more easily able to attract new employees, more new grads, because you're able to say that you use AI. Maybe these people are going to have more time to spend with clients, or they're going to be doing more valuable work. A lot of times, the people who are a little bit nervous in the beginning during the implementation actually end up being the ones going, oh gosh, I hated this part. I don't want to finger trace this social security number 12 different ways. Now I have time to go do these other things. So I think that's where DeepSee can come in, is being able to just add those other cherries on top once we've helped you dig down to what the real problem statement is all these other things that you're going to find benefits with by deploying something like this.
Yeah, Kate, if I can just add, I
Please.
think one of the things that going back to like what good looks like, one of the things that, and I think this is an industry-wide trend, especially in the SaaS apocalypse, if you follow the market, it's you've got to be driving towards outcomes. Like, and that goes back to start with the business problem, right? Like, what is the business problem? Do I have a seasonal surge in hiring, which costs me not just expense on the hiring side, but you've got training, you've got cycle time, et cetera. Those are very important to sort of set the table with, because it's just too easy to go, oh, I'm going to slap AI on an existing process and it's going to be magic and things are going to be solved. I think if you really, I think we have the best success when we sit with the business teams and we talk about those outcomes. Like, what are the top three
Mhm.
things? Sometimes it's as simple as I want to do more loans through the same pipe with the same team faster. And then what happens is you generate more quantity of loan flow. And then the next thing is, well, I have to do a quarterly review or a loan data quality check, which by the way is a great next use case
Mhm.
that can be attached to the DeepSea platform. Or I have a compliance kind of I don't want to say nuisance, but I have a compliance administration problem. HMDA CRA is a great example. It's the same thing every cycle time, and it ends up somebody in a room with a bunch of monitors doing, as Colleen pointed out, finger tracing. Those are prime use cases to just automate, importantly, with human in the loop oversight. That's a really big important part of this. Is can't be black box. You can't just throw it in Claude or OpenAI or Copilot and say, hey, go do it for me, because we all know that sometimes the answers are great, but you never know precisely, because it's all math at the end of the day. And so it's very important to have that human in the loop, have that subject matter expertise as part of the orchestration, even if it's just to supervise. And then over time, you feel comfortable that you can sort of straight through process certain types or certain categories. I think that's a really important component of the sort of planning and strategy phase. And then, deploy your first use case, make sure that you're mapping to those outcomes, and then move on. And one of the other great things about AI, and I hate calling it AI, but it's really about the intelligence that you garner by doing that, is it actually almost prioritizes what your next areas of opportunity are. And I mean, Christian is his own AI because he's identified these. He sort of knew this going forward. But if I can take in all this unstructured content, mine it, do whatever I'm going to do with it, what else can I do with it? And maybe that's not an operations. Maybe that's a marketing effort. Maybe that's faster treasury onboarding for bringing in new deposits to the bank. These are all the opportunities that base sort of implementation sets the stage for.
Thanks, Steve. And I think somewhat related in terms of the finger tracing that we were talking about earlier of getting buy-in from teams is a big part of this, and getting success around it is the people side of this. So, Christian, when you've been implementing new solutions and it's going to change how people do their jobs, sometimes there can be resistance. What was some, if any, of the resistance you faced, and how did you think about getting your team on board?
Yeah, I mean, with everything that we do, culture is the first thing in mind. I mean, you can say that. I don't know how to convince anybody of that. But basically, it was the first thought that we really had was not should we do this? We made the decision. This is what makes sense for the bank. So now the question is, why does it make sense for the team that we need to help do it? Not how do we trick them into doing this? How do we, do it's genuinely why are we doing this for them? And that's the story that you work out and you work with them on. And when you're communicative upfront of, hey, team, we need you to build this. Because earlier you said it was my journey. It was not my journey. I was there, but it was this team, our indirect lending team, that led this completely with Colleen. And so the conversation with them was, hey, look, you guys are trying to scale. You have your own goals, your incentives are based on it. This is your business line. So hiring an individual is going to take X dollars out of that bottom line. That in itself is one piece. Hey, if you can build this, it's going to make things better. But two, if you do this, your job is going to cut in half of this manual stuff that you're having to do. And the rest of your time now can be spent building the business, going to do the things that add value to the business, that are things that you want. And so when you have that conversation, we never had a single pushback from, do we really want to do this? It's hard. You can ask Colleen, the two people that were on that team leading this, they pushed it more than I did. They were on every single call nonstop, getting work done in between the two. They got the vision of doing this as much as anybody. And they were more incented than I was even to get it done. So they really did it. They did a great job with it. So I don't think it's not about lip service or trying to convince people why this isn't scary. It's just communicating from the very beginning. This is what it's going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is how it affects you, and this is why it's going to be better for you in the long run. And every use case that we've done, which I think we've got three now that are rolling,
Hmm. Hmm.
not a single person has ever said, we don't know about this. It's always been, thank God, let's get this done.
I, I just want to add something to what Christian said. I resent all the sort of public facing hype about the jobs apocalypse. I think it's
Hmm.
self-serving. I think, you know, we all thought full service driving was going to happen 10 years ago, right? And we're still not there, right? It's better, but people are still driving cars. Now, maybe that'll change in the next 5 years. But I think, there's two things that I think are really important. One, AI adoption is massively deflationary. It's going to reduce the cost and the time it takes to do things that we've normally done. I have no doubt about that. I also feel, and it might sound a little schizophrenic, that we are going to need knowledge workers. We're going to need people who upskill or end up being the manager of certain AI implementations or armies of agents. And I think that, to Christian's point, making sure the teams understand that this isn't about, oh, we're just taking expense out of the business and here's a shovel, please dig your hole, right? It's more about getting them sort of higher up in the knowledge work. And, especially with, college grads and younger folks who have AI on their phone, they're using it all the time, right? They know how beneficial it is for certain tasks. You want to be able to sort of message to them that this isn't about, job reduction. This is about, increasing job value. And I think, we as an industry, and I think we could do a much better job articulating that rather than, the gloom and doom that we read all day. It'll eventually flame out, but I think that's an important message internally at shops. And I think Christian and Colony have done a great job.
And if I can add one more thing, we we did this exactly. So what business doesn't have 10 jobs they wish they could hire for? Like I can tell you, we've got a backlog of as soon as we get approval, we'll go and hire this. As soon as we can do that, there's so many things that we want to be doing that we can't do because of resources. And so when I took over banking solutions, which is our like treasury, merchant, credit card group, we had support, sales, and then operations. I do not have an operations department anymore. We automated a huge chunk of that. Not most of that actually wasn't AI. It's amazing. You don't actually need AI to be better at doing stuff. Banks are so bad at operations, but that's another conversation. We automated so much of that, got rid of some of the things that weren't necessary, moved them all into a new data team. I mean, that is you don't it's not a either you're doing this job or we don't need you. It is a hey, we've got 10 roles. What do you really want to be doing? What are you skilled at? I promise you, we'll be able to find something that really, like Steve said, upskills and increases the value of the work that everybody is doing.
That's great. And I think in some ways, we got a question in the chat that can be helpful of that there is so much, while we don't think they're taking away jobs, there is so much change that's happening in this area. And that I think in some ways you have to be a little bit uncomfortable potentially bringing on a solution that doesn't always work, and that you might need to have contingency plans, or it might have a process that you thought was going to be great for automation. It might need to pivot a little bit. How do you all, any best practices you can share about being comfortable with some of the technology that's changing quickly, or adopting processes as you learn more and realize there might be something better to do?
Yeah, I saw the question in the chat from Mark. I want to address that. I think, as a strategy, and this will sound a little maybe self-serving, but as a strategy, you want to avoid sort of one and done solutions, or what I would call wrappers. There's a billion wrapper technologies out there that are just, giving you a better interface to interact with an AI model. And I think what you want to do is really think about something that can grow with you and be more of a platform solution without having to rip and replace systems. Because let's face it, we're not going to change out our cores except every 10 or 20 years. And we have a number of different important systems in our environment that are going to be there. The question is, how do we make the handoff or the data exchange or the workflow between those systems more efficient so we're not plugging it with people? And I think that's a really important area to focus on. I think the obvious answer to Mark's question about, moving fast, breaking things kind of model is really you want to start with a discrete problem. And I always say, where are your people spending their time? Just give me a day in the life of, one of your ops teams, and where do they spend their time? And it always, the end of that conversation always ends with, well, I bring up a spreadsheet here and I pull out system output there, and I'm doing some transposing, and then I send it to someone else to check. Those kinds of, I call them maker checker, just manual reconciliations. Those are perfect use cases where AI can really 10x not just the velocity, but also the accuracy and the ability to handle more, and then simultaneously upskill the team members. There's another question in the chat about, are we specifically AI versus RPA? So the way we think about RPA, and RPA was a great tool when you had content that was largely sort of structured or never changed on the inbound, and you knew exactly what the destination target format was going to be, and you could sort of, essentially super macro those solutions. And it's a very programmatic tool, right? You're going to need technologists to put that in play. I think, unlike RPA, we sort of sit on top of those solutions for the really complex, the really unstructured, what I would call messy data inbound and data outbound problem, where you have to sort of take, 5 or 10 different pieces of content, pull information off of all that content onto a single pane of glass, like in the case of loans, make a loan disposition, and then make sure that content gets put into the LOS for effective execution. Could you do it with RPA? Maybe. It would be a lot of programming, a lot of time, and it could be a lot of expense. So that's kind of how I would characterize the difference.
Awesome. From that, I want to make sure that we get to talking about actual implementation. So, Christian, what did the process look like from we decided to do this to actually going live? Amount of time, like the kind of engagement level that's needed from your subject matter experts.
Yeah, I mean, it completely comes down to the use case. That's what I love about working with a company like DeepSee, is just that it's not one solution to it. I mean, like with online account opening, what the use cases are all the same, and so this is the implementation. We had one agent that took maybe 3 weeks to build our check agent.
Right.
And that was probably would have been done even faster if it was actually a priority. We were like, this would be a fun thing to do. Let's do it. And then our actual indirect lending one, that was a beast because we had a system that we were integrating with that did not have APIs, did not have any kind of batch filing. I think we actually did end up using RPA for that, but it was we knew going in this, we were working with DeepSee because we had not been able to figure it out otherwise. So that one took a little bit longer. I don't know how long it took to do the whole thing, but these loan packages are 80 something pages. So that one took months. I mean, we were probably like live in testing after 4 to 6 months. But there were 5 systems, I think, involved. So it was tackling that gave us the confidence of, okay, if they can tackle this one, then we feel very confident they can tackle our pulling data from this system, putting it in the right format, and putting it into this system. So in terms of implementation, like I said, it goes to the check bot thing that we built. That was a couple of weeks. Nobody was involved but me and DeepSee for the indirect lending. It was mostly our indirect lending team. We may have pulled in like an ops person once or twice, but it was mostly them, and they spent a good time on it. But it was a big project, and we knew that going. So, and then someone asked about there being a I don't even see the question anymore, but somebody asked about, I don't know where it went.
Yeah, it disappeared.
Yeah, somebody asked
the indirect loans perspective from the department level with these customer facing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they were asking basically if this was like a customer facing person or a
Mm,
behind the scenes person. It was a little bit of both because it's a small
yeah.
team. We're very they are very you jump in where you need to jump in. So the person who mostly this affected, her name's Stephanie, and she handles all the back end of the loans, but she also
Hmm.
interfaces with customers some and helps kind of deal with some of those issues. So this basically took a lot of the time off of dealing with the loans and allowed her to focus more on how do we get the customers that we've signed more integrated? We're working on cross-selling to them other stuff. So, and then
Hmm.
adding dealerships and all that. So, um, yeah, she was jack of all trades and a master of all as well.
Yeah.
And then, Colleen, from your perspective, what does, not just with Colony, but across other banks, what does implementation process? I know a little bit different, but what are some of the
Mm.
phases that someone might expect to go through as they're implementing?
Yeah, I would say just really high level. We start with discovery and prep. So, like we've been saying, hopefully you start with a really solid direct use case. We have success criteria defined. And I would say for the most part, we have these agents that are pre-built, pre-trained, pre-configured for a number of different use cases now across regional community banking. So after we do that discovery and prep to understand what the scope of that project is, we start to just ingest their data and documents. Initially, that doesn't have to be an integration. We don't have a top-down approach at DeepSee, so it can be something that they're sending across to us as FTP or in a share file. And really, what we start to do is show that team their actual data and documentation in the DeepSee tenant. And like I said, we're able to take that pre-trained agent that, maybe gets them like 75, 80% of the way there, and then configure it to exactly how they do their process. So to Christian's point, his team, I think, is up to 125, 26 checklist items. Another bank may have 60 checklist items. Another might have 250 checklist items. So we just do that configuration with them. And as we do that, it's just an iterative feedback loop. We're working at least once, usually twice a week with those teams to make sure that the solution that we're delivering them is meeting that outcome the exact way that they expect that their subject matter expert human beings are doing today. And to Steve's point, we're turning that individual into someone managing that agent instead of someone, finding where the social security number is wrong.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. Um, so now let's kind of talk about scaling and how someone goes from one use case to going to the next. So, Christian, obviously you started with the one, you had success. How did you think about what's next? Like when there's so many different problems to solve, and I know you mentioned this other use case that was only a couple weeks. How do you prioritize that when there are so many different places that you could go and tackle the problem?
I think this one is also an art rather than a science. It depends, I think. With Deep Sea, we're typically tackling some of our bigger processes, and we're new in this. A lot of banks had heavy RPA processes already built out, things like that. We never had any of that really. So we're coming into this with our operations department is fully manual. I mean, well, luckily we worked on the some of those processes we fixed a lot with just our API integrations, and that's made a huge difference. But still on on a lot of the back end stuff, it is very manual. So we're tackling some of the bigger issues, and so that really comes down to just we're really doing one big project at a time, trying to get those out. And I think we're good partners with DeepSea because we're trying to think through like what is something that is really going to help us, but also would be valuable to other banks that they can, take this template and resell. Um, so I think that's kind of how we're focusing on that side of the projects is just what's going to bring the most value to everybody. How can we get it done? Um, and going at it like that, I think, yeah, I mean, there's lots of thoughts on that. That's more of a strategy thing. I'd like to get
Hmm.
project manager-y with it and
Mhm.
have a full backlog and have teams running multiple things. But it's a muscle. I mean, I say that with all things technology and innovation. Like you can't go from zero to a fully disconnected customer information file that you're running data through. Like it doesn't happen like that. You've got to kind
Hmm.
of do use case by use case, get comfortable, determine, hey, we do need to hire for this. Let's bring in an expert. Let's not.
Hmm.
it just takes time to learn it. And I feel like we're kind of at that phase of, all right, we've got things running. We're seeing real improvement. We're seeing real efficiency and automation. How do we kind of go into phase two where this is something we scale building out more processes as well?
There's
To
a
Christian's point too, I think that you don't have to be an outlier like Colony. They are fantastic, but I think there's like, to his point, there's that view of like, what's the next use case? What's the next exciting thing? How can we scale this? But I think what Steve and I also see on a more regular basis is just like, hey, we just did loan funding. Can we do loan boarding? Can we do QA? Can we do portfolio management? And just moving that use case farther to the left, farther to the right, or taking the insights that you get from that first use case of where you're seeing the most work happen and letting kind of AI guide you to what that next use case should be. So you can go the route of like that creative, ticking down that outcome list, or you can kind of, keep expanding where you landed and let us, keep going like to get you as STP as we can. Sorry, Steve, you were going to say something.
Well, no, I thank you. There was a question in the chat I was trying to get to because it's a longer answer, but there's a question about, is there a separate user interface that employees would need to be trained on? Great question. Again, unlike RPA, which is a very technology-centric sort of tool, you need technologists to build it, you need technologists to deploy it. Our tool is meant to be driven by business users. And so, yes, there is a user interface. It's really designed for a business person to intuitively, navigate their new manual process over using the DeepSee single pane of glass versus, the manual process. And then, the guidance on change management, it sort of goes back to what Christian said and what Colleen said. You just have to inoculate the concern that no one's going to voice. And you have to sit down and you have to talk about, okay, we want to have a thoughtful, methodical, most importantly, strategic kind of analysis of where, Christian had a great point. Where are we headcount constrained? And let's back into why. And it could be, a great area to just sort of say, okay, if we could eliminate all these manual steps that we think we need headcount for, what would that look like? And I think that really it has this sort of endowment effect with teams, which then they become owners of the solution rather than victims of it. And I found that is such a great mindset shift. And if you can just like have them not look at X and not read, the news about all the doom and gloom, I think people really embrace it, especially people who are, personally conversant and interacting with AI every day.
Awesome. Well, we just have a minute left. So, with that, do each of you just want to give everyone one key piece of advice as they think about bringing in DeepSee? And Christian, I think for you, if you were talking to a banker who wanted to bring this in, what's one thing that you would tell them?
If I can hijack for 2 seconds. One,
Please.
Nate, I'm sure there's going to be a recording, right? That will be shared.
100%.
Yeah, okay.
Yes,
So
we'll
you'll
share
get
with
the
you.
recording. Two, anybody, if you want to talk to me, I'm happy to hop on a call and just explain things, talk with your CEO, whatever it is. I'm a big proponent of community banks, and the only way we're going to succeed is if we work together to figure out the things that the big banks are spending billions on. So feel free to reach out and I'll sit down with you. My one point, I would like to instead ask a question quickly to Steve and Colleen. The thing I keep hearing over and over again that we've dealt with because we have it, but how do you answer the question of just, hey, how do we secure AI? How do we feel comfortable
Oh,
with
yeah,
the AI? Like I'm
yeah.
scared that it's going to take my data and give it to the internet. That's the number one thing I hear that I have an answer for, but I feel like you all would have a better one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple components, and that's a really important point. It kind of speaks to the comment I made about guardrails. One, it's very easy to transparently show how an LLM or an AI model is not using your data to train other data. So you just need your vendor to show you how that works.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing, we provide this in the form of what we call deep sea blueprints, which is really, think of a blueprint just like you think of a blueprint of a house. It is a very explicit, not just set of steps about the process itself, and it sort of documents that process, but it's a manifest of all the underlying pieces of um, technology that took an action to automate or orchestrate that process. And most importantly, what guardrails the bank has decided to put in place. The easy example is loans over a certain amount always have to
Hmm.
have an HTN, human in the loop check, or
Hmm.
loans under a certain amount, just STP, and we'll audit on the back test. I think having an explicit manifest, that for us it would be the blueprint, is a really important way to give comfort to your compliance teams, your tech teams, auditors. I just had this conversation with a bank, and they were looking for some of that material because you want to be able, you don't want to say, well, the model said it was okay, right? Because
Hmm.
it's like you'd never want to be in that position. And I think those are some steps you can take.
Sorry for hijacking there, Katie.
No, that was great. And I think actually we have one more question. So maybe Christian, you can answer this before you finish. So can you talk a little bit how you structured your corporate AI policy to provide a good framework for this type of testing?
Yeah, and I think that would be the first step that I would take for anybody is get an AI policy in place. I mean, we did it a while ago, a year and a half, so I don't even remember most of the things that went in it, but we do look at it when we're making decisions. Because this is one of those actual things where we spent the time to meet with our compliance team, our leadership and board, our CIO or chief information officer, and we met with other banks just to basically say, what are all the things that we're scared of? What are the things that theoretically AI could really break for us? And we put in rules of how we get comfortable with those things. So any partner that we work with can't be used to train models, can't be that kind of stuff. And then we ran it by other banks that were building AI policies. So that's kind of how we came about it. It's not that hard to do. Honestly, ask AI to give you the first run through of it, and then go and take that to chief information officer and other banks. Happy to talk to once again, reach out to me. I'm sure DeepSee has a lot of opinions
That's what I
on
was going to say. Reach out to us. Yeah.
yeah. So build an AI policy so you've got a framework that makes you comfortable with
Hmm.
decisions that you're making, and you're not
We
forgetting to ask a company something.
we
um,
uh, we share ours, which we provide to our auditors all the time
Hmm.
with our
Yep.
clients and prospects, because it's, our banks range from community and regional banks to the biggest banks in the world. So you can imagine the breadth and depth of detail we have to provide.
So there you go. I'd start with that, and then it's way easier when you're deciding, hey, we want to bring in an AI tool, whether it's an LLM or, agentic, whatever.
Hmm.
Wonderful. Okay, any other last thoughts from any of you?
Oh, we have an AI policy. Here's what you do. You get the AI policy that we give you, and you take, this is Meta. You take your AI policy, you put it in a secure Claude enterprise license. That means they don't train on your data, and you prompt it to give you the compare. And it would literally, I
Hmm.
can give you the
Hmm.
prompts. It will literally give you a very robust sort of answer. And that's a great use of a chatbot. That's maybe Copilot can do it. I don't know, but we'll see.
Great. Well, thank you all for joining today. We appreciate it. And thank you to Steve, Colleen, and Christian for your time. And like they said, please reach out if you have any questions. We're happy to make those connections and make sure that you get what you need here.